I pretended to be poor to test my girlfriend's family. They humiliated me at dinner. The next day, her father walked into my hospital and turned pale when he saw my badge read Chief Surgeon. Look, I'm 32 years old. And about 4 months ago, I made one of the craziest decisions of my life. I dressed up like a broke pizza delivery guy and walked into my girlfriend's family dinner just to see how they'd treat me. Man, what I found out that night changed everything. Let me back up. Her name was Sarah, 28, gorgeous, worked in marketing for some tech startup. We met at a coffee shop, totally random. She spilled her latte all over me. We laughed about it, exchanged numbers. The first few weeks were great, easy, fun. She was smart, funny, had this energy that just pulled you in. But then, little things started standing out. We'd be planning a date, and she'd always suggest the expensive spots. Not like nice restaurants. I mean, the places where you're dropping $300 on dinner. When I suggested cheaper options, food trucks, casual bars, whatever, she'd get this look. Like I just asked her to eat at a gas station. She'd laugh it off, say something about wanting to treat ourselves, but man, it felt off. And she asked about money. A lot. Not directly, you know? She was smooth about it. Questions about my car. I drove a decent Audi at the time, nothing crazy. Questions about my place. I had a nice condo downtown. She'd throw out comments about investment properties, retirement plans, future goals, always circling back to finances. The thing is, I never told her what I actually did for a living. I know, sounds weird. But here's the deal. I work in a field where people treat you real different when they know your position. Suddenly, you're not just a guy anymore. You're a paycheck. A status symbol. I'd been burned before by someone who loved my title more than she loved me. So when Sarah asked what I did, I kept it vague. Told her I worked in healthcare. Some management stuff. Technical work, boring, didn't like talking about it. She seemed fine with that answer. Didn't press for details. And honestly, that should have been my first clue. Because the Sarah I was dating, she was clearly looking for something specific. 8 months in, things started getting serious. We were talking about moving in together. Future plans. Meeting the families. But every time I brought up meeting her parents, she'd dodge. Always had an excuse. They were traveling. Her dad was busy with work. Her mom was dealing with some family drama. It was always something. But she'd met my folks. My parents loved her. My mom was already talking about grandkids, for crying out loud. And I'm sitting there thinking, why won't she let me meet hers? Then one night, we were at her place, having wine, just talking, and she let something slip. She mentioned her dad had strong opinions about the kind of man she should date. Successful, ambitious, someone who could provide a certain lifestyle. She said it casually, like it was no big deal, but I caught the weight behind it, the way she looked at me when she said it, like she was measuring me against some invisible standard. That's when it clicked. She'd been vague about my job because she was embarrassed. She hadn't introduced me to her family because I wasn't good enough. In her mind or her dad's mind, I was just some mid-level healthcare worker, not impressive enough for their standards. And man, that pissed me off. Not because of what I actually was, I mean, I'd worked my ass off to get where I am, but because she'd been judging me, hiding me, treating me like I wasn't worth showing off until she was sure about me. So I made a decision. I was going to meet her family, but I wasn't going as the real me. I was going as someone even lower than what she thought I was. I wanted to see how they'd treat me when they thought I was nobody. When they thought I was broke, directionless, going nowhere in life. I wanted to see their true colors. My buddy Mike had this beat-up 1998 Honda Civic he was about to sell for scrap. Cigarette burns in the seats, engine that sounded like it was dying, paint faded to hell. I borrowed it for the night. Went to Goodwill, Bought the cheapest clothes I could find, ripped jeans, a faded metallic shirt, old Vans with holes in them. Looked like I'd just gotten off a 12-hour shift at some dead-end job. Sarah had finally caved and set up the dinner. Her parents wanted to meet me. She seemed nervous about it. Kept telling me to dress nice, make a good impression, be polite. I told her not to worry, that I'd be on my best behavior. She had nitrogen monoxide idea what I was planning. The night of the dinner, I told her I'd meet her there. Said I had to work late. She bought it. I spent 20 minutes in my bathroom, staring at myself in the mirror, dressed like a broke college dropout. Part of me felt ridiculous. Part of me felt like I was about to prove something important. I stopped at a Pizza Hut on the way, bought a large pepperoni, let it sit in the passenger seat getting lukewarm. Figured if I'm gonna look the part, might as well commit to the bit. I plugged the address into my GPS, started driving. The neighborhoods got nicer, then really nice, then mansions, gated communities. The kind of place where the lawns look like golf courses and the cars in the driveways cost more than most people's houses. I pulled up to the address, wrought iron gates, stone driveway, a house that looked like it belonged in a magazine. I sat there in that rattling Civic, pizza on my lap, wearing clothes that smelled like thrift store mothballs. And I thought, what the hell am I doing? But I'd come this far. I drove through the gates, parked next to a Mercedes and a Range Rover. The contrast was almost funny. Almost got out, grabbed the pizza box, walked up to the front door. The doorbell echoed inside like I was ringing a church bell. I heard footsteps, heels on marble. The door opened. It was her mother, blonde, 50s, dressed like she was about to attend a charity gala. Pearls, the whole deal. She looked at me, then at the Civic, then at the pizza box in my hand. And the look on her face, man, I'll never forget it. Pure disgust. Like I just crawled out of a sewer and had the audacity to ring her doorbell. She didn't say hello, didn't smile, just stood there staring at me like I was something she needed to scrape off her expensive doormat. Finally, she spoke, asked if I was lost. Not joking, dead serious. Like there was nitrogen monoxide, way one could possibly be there for her daughter. I told her I was there for Sarah, that I was her boyfriend. The silence that followed. Brother, you could have heard a pin drop. And that's when I knew. This night was going to be exactly as bad as I thought it would be. She just stood there in the doorway, looking at me like I was a stray dog that had wandered onto her property. Then she called for Sarah. Not warmly. More like she was summoning someone to deal with a problem. Sarah came to the door maybe 30 seconds later. And man, the look on her face when she saw me. I watched her eyes go from confusion to shock to embarrassment. Pure, unfiltered embarrassment. Like I'd just shown up to prom in a clown costume. She tried to recover. Gave me this tight smile. Pulled me inside quickly, like she was trying to hide me before the neighbors saw. Her mom just walked away without saying another word. Didn't offer to take the pizza. Didn't welcome me in. Just left. Sarah grabbed my arm, whispered that I looked different, asked what happened to dressing nice. I shrugged, told her I came straight from work, didn't have time to change. She looked like she wanted to die right there in the foyer. The house was massive, like something out of a magazine spread. Marble floors, chandelier in the entryway, artwork on the walls that probably cost more than most people make in a year. And there I was, standing in the middle of it in ripped jeans and a metallic shirt, holding a lukewarm Pizza Hut box like some kind of offering. Sarah led me to the living room, told me to wait, that her dad would be down in a minute. Her voice had this edge to it I'd never heard before, like she was already regretting this entire thing. I sat down on this white couch that looked like it had never been sat on. Put the pizza box on the coffee table. Felt completely out of place, which was exactly the point. Then I heard footsteps, heavy, confident, coming down the stairs. Her father appeared. Richard Patterson, mid-50s, tall, built like he used to play college football and still hit the gym regularly. Expensive suit, even though we were just having dinner at home. Gold watch. The kind of guy who walks into a room expecting everyone to stand up. He looked at me, then at the pizza box, then back at me. The handshake he gave me was one of those power move handshakes. Squeezed hard, held eye contact too long, trying to establish dominance from the jump. I matched it. Didn't flinch. He seemed surprised by that, maybe even annoyed. He asked what I did for a living. Didn't even say hello first. Just went straight for it. I told him I worked in food service, delivery, pizza mostly, some other stuff on the side. The silence that followed was brutal. Sarah looked like she wanted to disappear into the couch cushions. Her mom, who'd reappeared with drinks, actually let out this little laugh, like she thought I was joking. When she realized I wasn't, the smile died on her face. Richard just nodded slowly, said something about how honest work is respectable, but then immediately pivoted to talking about ambition. How important it is for a man to have goals, to push himself, to be more than just comfortable. The way he said comfortable, man, it was dripping with condescension. Dinner was ready. We moved to the dining room, another massive space. Table that could seat 12 easily, candles, fancy place settings. The whole production. Sarah's younger brother was already sitting there. Kyle, 24, fresh out of grad school, working at some investment firm his dad had connections at. He looked at me, looked at my clothes, and I could see the smirk forming. We sat down. The mother had made this elaborate meal. Roasted duck, fancy vegetables I couldn't even name, wine that probably cost more per bottle than my Goodwill outfit. They started eating. I started eating. Nobody said much at first. Then Richard started up again. He asked about my car. I told him it was a Civic, older model. Got me where I needed to go. He nodded, said he used to drive something similar back in college. Before he got serious about his career. Before he understood what success looked like. Kyle jumped in. Asked if I delivered pizza full-time, or if it was just a side thing. I said full-time. He laughed. Actually laughed. Said he had a buddy who did that in college to pay for beer money. Asked if I was planning to make a career out of it. Sarah told him to stop. But it was weak. Half-hearted. She didn't actually defend me. Just asked him to be nice, which somehow made it worse. The mother chimed in. Asked if I had gone to college. I told her some. Didn't finish. She made this sympathetic noise, like I'd just told her about a terminal illness. Said education was so important these days. That without a degree, it was hard to really get anywhere in life. Richard agreed. Started talking about how he built his business from the ground up. How he worked 80-hour weeks. How he sacrificed to give his family the life they deserved. How he expected the same kind of drive from anyone who wanted to be part of this family. That last part, he looked right at me when he said it. I just nodded. Took another bite of duck. Let him talk. Kyle asked what my 5-year plan was. Where did I see myself down the road? I told him I was taking it day by day, trying to stay afloat. He exchanged a look with his dad. The kind of look that said everything without saying anything. Richard leaned back in his chair, swirled his wine, started talking about how he was scheduled for surgery next week. Heart thing. Nothing too serious, but serious enough. Triple bypass. One of the best cardiac surgeons in the state was doing it. Cost a fortune, but worth it. Health is wealth, after all. He said the surgery alone was running close to $200,000. Insurance covered most of it, but still. The kind of money that most people couldn't even fathom spending on healthcare. Then he looked at me, asked if I had good insurance through my job. I told him no. Most delivery drivers don't. He shook his head. Said that was the problem with jobs like mine. No security, no benefits, no future. Just scraping by, one paycheck away from disaster. Sarah finally spoke up. Tried to change the subject. Asked about dessert. Her mom ignored her. Kept staring at me like I was some kind of science experiment. The mother asked how Sarah and I met. I told her, coffee shop. She spilled her drink on me. We laughed about it. The mother smiled. Said that sounded sweet. Then asked how I planned to support a family someday. On a delivery driver's salary. I didn't answer that one. Just took a sip of water. Stayed quiet. Richard took over. Said he wasn't trying to be rude. That he was just being practical. That as Sarah's father, he had to think about her future, about stability, about the kind of life she deserved. He said Sarah grew up with certain expectations, private schools, nice things, opportunities, and he wanted to make sure whoever she ended up with could continue providing that lifestyle. Kyle added that Sarah could do better. Didn't even try to be subtle about it. Just said it, right there at the table. Sarah told him to shut up, but again, no real heat behind it. The rest of dinner was more of the same. Little comments, passive-aggressive questions. Richard talking about his success. The mother asking about my family, my background, my prospects. Kyle making jokes at my expense. And Sarah just sat there, embarrassed, uncomfortable, but not defending me. Not once. After dessert, some fancy cake, I barely touched. Richard stood up. Said he had some work to do in his office. Shook my hand again. Told me it was nice to meet me. That he hoped I'd think seriously about my future. About what I wanted out of life. Then he looked at Sarah. Told her she had 5 minutes to say goodbye to her friend. That they had an early morning tomorrow. Her friend. Not her boyfriend. Her friend. Sarah walked me to the door. She was apologizing, saying her family was just protective, that they didn't mean anything by it, that they just wanted the best for her. I asked if she thought I was the best for her. She hesitated. Man, she actually hesitated. That told me everything I needed to know. I left, drove home in that beat-up Civic. Didn't say much. She texted me later that night, said sorry about the awkwardness. That we could talk about it tomorrow. I stared at that message for a long time. Then I deleted it. Blocked her number. Blocked her on everything. And the next morning, I got up, put on my scrubs, and went to work. Because that's what I do. I'm a surgeon. I have lives to save. But man, I'll be honest. Part of me wanted to see those people again. Wanted to see the look on their faces when they realized who I really was. And brother, I was about to get that chance sooner than I ever expected. The next few weeks were rough. Not gonna lie. But I dealt with it the way I always deal with things. I didn't call anyone. Didn't sit around feeling sorry for myself. I just worked. I was at the hospital 12, sometimes 14 hours a day. Took every surgery I could get scheduled for. Complex cases, high-risk patients, the kind of operations that require absolute focus. Which was perfect. Because when you're elbow deep in someone's chest cavity, trying to repair a valve or bypass a blocked artery, you don't have time to think about your own problems. And when I wasn't working, I was at the gym, twice a day sometimes. Morning session before my shift, evening session after. Pushed myself until my muscles screamed, until I was too exhausted to think about that dinner, about the way they looked at me, about the way Sarah just sat there and let it happen. Some of my colleagues suggested it, casually, the way doctors do when they notice you're putting in too many hours. I just smiled, said I was fine, changed the subject. Because honestly, the gym helped more than any therapist could. And work gave me purpose. I was saving lives, making a real difference. That mattered more than sitting on some couch talking about my emotions. But Sarah, man, she didn't make it easy to move on. She started texting from different numbers. I'd block one, another would pop up a day later. The messages were all the same, apologizing, saying her family was out of line, that she should have defended me, that she wanted to explain, to talk, to fix things. I ignored every single one. Then the emails started, long ones. Paragraphs about how she'd been thinking about everything, how she realized she'd made a mistake, how she wanted another chance. I set up a filter, sent them straight to trash. Didn't read them. 3 weeks after that disaster of a dinner, I was finishing up a consultation in the cardiac wing. It was late afternoon. I was tired, hadn't eaten lunch. Just wanted to finish my notes and head to the gym. I walked out of the patient room and there she was, standing in the hallway. Sarah, just waiting there like she had every right to be in a restricted area of the hospital. Security should have stopped her at the desk. I made a mental note to talk to them about that later. She started talking immediately, saying she needed to see me, that I couldn't just ghost her like this, that we needed to have a conversation. I told her there was nothing to talk about, that we were done, that she needed to leave. She got upset. Said I was being unfair, that I didn't understand, that her family didn't know the real me, and that's when she saw it. My badge, clipped to my chest, the one I wear every day, white coat, name embroidered on the pocket, and underneath my name, clear as day, Chief of Cardiac Surgery. She stopped mid-sentence, just stared at it. I watched her face go through about 5 different emotions in 10 seconds. Confusion, shock, realization, then something that looked almost like anger. She asked what that meant. I told her exactly what it said, that I was the Chief of Cardiac Surgery, that I'd been a surgeon for 8 years, that I ran the entire department. The look on her face, man, it was almost worth all the bullshit just to see that. She started backtracking immediately, saying she didn't know, that I never told her, that if she'd known, things would have been different. Her family would have been different. And that right there, that was the problem. That was exactly why I tested them in the first place. I told her I knew she didn't know. That was the whole point. I wanted to see how she and her family treated someone they thought was beneath them. And I got my answer. She tried to argue. Said it wasn't fair, that I'd lied to her, that I'd set her up, that she never would have hidden me from her family if she'd known what I really did. I just looked at her, asked her if she understood what she was saying, that she was literally admitting she was embarrassed by me when she thought I was just a livery guy, that my worth as a person was directly tied to my job title and my paycheck. She didn't have an answer for that, just stood there, mouth open, trying to find words that didn't make her sound as shallow as she clearly was. I told her we were done, that there was nothing left to say, that she should leave before I called security. She started crying, saying I was being cruel, that she loved me, that she made a mistake, but everyone makes mistakes, that I was throwing away what we had over one bad dinner. One bad dinner. Like that's all it was. Like I hadn't watched her entire family treat me like garbage for 2 hours while she sat there embarrassed instead of standing up for me. I didn't raise my voice, didn't get emotional, just told her calmly that what we had was built on a lie, that she never knew me. She knew the version of me she thought could give her the lifestyle she wanted. And now that she knew the truth, she suddenly wanted me back, not because she loved me, but because I was suddenly good enough for her precious family. She tried to reach for my arm. I stepped back, told her not to touch me, that she needed to leave. Now, one of the nurses had noticed the situation, came over, asked if everything was okay. I told her yes, that Sarah was just leaving. The nurse stayed there, professional, waiting. Sarah looked at me one more time, mascara running, still trying to find the right words. still thinking there was something she could say that would fix this. There wasn't. She left. I watched her walk down the hallway, past the nurse's station, toward the elevators. Watched her disappear behind the closing doors, and I felt nothing. No sadness. No regret. Just relief that it was finally over. I went back to work. Finished my notes. Did my rounds. Checked on my post-op patients. Then I went to the gym. Worked out. Went home. Ate dinner. Watched some TV. Went to bed. Because that's what you do. You don't sit around wallowing. You get back to work. You focus on what matters. You keep moving forward. But life, man, life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. 3 weeks later, I was in my office going over the surgical schedule for the upcoming week. Monday was packed. 2 valve replacements, 1 bypass, pretty standard stuff. Then I saw Tuesday morning's emergency case. The name made me stop cold. Patterson Richard, age 56, emergency cardiac intervention. Triple bypass, high-risk patient, severe arterial blockage. Surgery scheduled for 6 a.m. Notes from the ER doc said the patient had come in with chest pains the night before. Scans showed critical blockage in 3 major arteries. Without immediate surgery, he had maybe a week, 2 at most. And I was the only surgeon available with the specialization needed for this particular case. I sat there staring at that name. Richard Patterson, Sarah's father. The man who'd spent 2 hours insulting me, questioning my ambition, my worth, my future. The man who'd looked at me like I was something he'd scraped off his shoe. And now his life was literally in my hands. I closed the file, leaned back in my chair, stared at the ceiling. Tomorrow morning, Richard Patterson was going to walk into my hospital. He was going to see my name on the OR board. He was going to realize that the broke pizza delivery guy he'd humiliated was the chief cardiac surgeon who was about to cut open his chest and hold his beating heart. And honestly, I had no idea how I felt about that. But I knew one thing for sure. Tomorrow was going to be interesting. I got to the hospital at 5:30 in the morning. Didn't sleep much the night before. Kept thinking about that name on the schedule. Richard Patterson. Part of me almost couldn't believe it. The universe has a twisted sense of humor sometimes. I went straight to my office, pulled up his file, reviewed everything. The scans, the blood work, the EM notes from the night before. It was bad. Real bad. 3 major arteries with 90% blockage. His heart was basically running on fumes. The E-doc's notes said he'd come in around 11 p.m., complaining of chest pains and shortness of breath. They'd rushed him through imaging, seen the blockages, and bumped him straight to emergency surgery. Without intervention, he had days, maybe a week if he was lucky. With surgery, 60% chance of survival. Maybe 70 if everything went perfect. But this was a complicated case. High risk. The kind of operation where one wrong move, one slip, and the patient doesn't wake up. And I was the only one who could do it. My colleague, who specializes in this, was out of state at a conference. The other cardiac surgeon on staff didn't have the experience with this particular type of bypass. It was me or nobody. I sat there staring at those scans, at the imaging showing his failing heart. And I'd be lying if I said I didn't think about it. About what would happen if I just passed on this case, said I wasn't feeling well. Let someone less experienced take it. Let the odds play out however they were going to play out. But I couldn't do that. Not because I forgave him, not because I was being the bigger person, but because I took an oath. I swore to do no harm, to save lives regardless of who the patient was. And as much as I hated this man, as much as I wanted to see him suffer the way he'd made me suffer, I wasn't going to let him die because of my pride. I prepped for surgery, scrub it in, got my team ready, reviewed the procedure one more time. By 5:55, we were ready to go. At 6 a.m. sharp, they wheeled him into pre-op. He was conscious, groggy from the pre-meds they'd given him, but awake. And the moment they rolled him past the OR board, the one with my name listed as lead surgeon, I saw it happen. He looked at the board, looked at my name, then looked at me standing there in my surgical cap and scrubs. The recognition was slow at first, like his brain couldn't process what he was seeing. Then it hit him all at once. His eyes went wide. His face went pale. And I mean pale, like all the blood just drained out of him. He tried to sit up on the gurney. One of the nurses gently pushed him back down, told him to stay calm, that we were going to take good care of him. He just kept staring at me, mouth open, couldn't form words. I walked over, kept my voice professional, clinical, told him good morning, that I was going to be performing his surgery, that we were going to do a triple bypass to restore blood flow to his heart. He finally found his voice, asked if it was really me, if I was actually the chief surgeon here. I told him yes, that I'd been chief of cardiac surgery for 3 years. Before that, I was a senior surgeon for 5 years. Trained at Johns Hopkins. Top of my class. The look on his face. Man, it was everything I'd imagined and more. He started trying to apologize, saying he didn't know, that if he'd known who I was, he never would have. He trailed off. Couldn't even finish the sentence. I just stood there. Didn't say anything. Let him sit with it. Then the door to pre-op opened and Sarah walked in. She must have been in the waiting room. Probably came with him when they admitted him the night before. She saw me, saw her dad on the gurney, and she lost it. Started crying immediately, saying she couldn't believe this was happening, that this couldn't be real. I ignored her, kept my focus on Richard, asked if he had any questions about the procedure, about the risks, about what to expect during recovery. He didn't answer, just kept staring at me like I was a ghost. Sarah tried to approach me, started saying my name, asking if we could talk. One of the nurses intercepted her, told her she needed to wait outside, that we were about to begin prep. Richard found his voice again, said he was sorry, that he'd been wrong about me, that he judged me unfairly, that he hoped I could forgive him. I looked him right in the eyes, told him I wasn't doing this surgery because I forgave him. I wasn't doing it because I was a good person or because I wanted to be the bigger man. I was doing it because I was a doctor, and doctors save lives. Even when we don't want to. His face crumpled. He started to say something else, but I cut him off. Told him he needed to save his strength, that the surgery was going to take about 6 hours, that he needed to stay calm and let us do our job. Sarah was still trying to get past the nurse, crying, saying she needed to talk to me, that this was all her fault, that she was sorry. I looked at her, just for a second. Then I looked at the surgical team, told them we were ready to begin. Turned back to Richard one last time, told him I'd see him when he woke up, that he was in good hands, that I was the best at what I did, and I was going to do everything in my power to make sure he survived this. Not because he deserved it, but because that's what I do. Then I walked out of pre-op, headed to the scrub room, started the ritual, soap, water, surgical scrub, 3 minutes on each hand, elbows, forearms, the routine I'd done thousands of times. My hands were steady. My mind was clear. Whatever feelings I had about Richard Patterson, about Sarah, about that whole nightmare dinner, I locked it away, compartmentalized it. Because in about 20 minutes, I was going to be holding this man's heart in my hands, literally, and I couldn't afford to let my emotions get in the way of that. One of the nurses asked if I was okay, if I wanted someone else to take the case, given the circumstances. I told her no, that I was fine, that this was just another surgery. She looked at me like she didn't quite believe that, but she didn't push it, just nodded, helped me into my surgical gown, gloves, mask. I walked into the OR. Richard was already under. Anesthesia had done its job. He was intubated. Monitors beeping steadily. My team was in position. Everyone knew their role. I stood over him. Looked down at the man who'd humiliated me. Who'd looked at me like I was worthless. Who'd suggested his daughter could do better than someone like me. And then I picked up the scalpel. Made the first incision. Clean. Precise. Exactly where it needed to be. And for the next 6 hours, I didn't think about that dinner. Didn't think about Sarah. Didn't think about revenge or justice or karma. I just did my job. Because at the end of the day, that's who I am. I'm a surgeon. And I save lives. Even when part of me wishes I didn't have to. The surgery took 6 hours and 23 minutes. Longer than I'd planned. There were complications. Unexpected bleeding in one of the bypass grafts. Had to stop, reclamp, resuture. The whole time, the monitors were screening at us. Blood pressure dropping, heart rate irregular. But we got it under control. Finished the bypass. All 3 arteries. Restored blood flow. By the time we closed him up, his heart was beating stronger than it probably had in years. He was going to live. Not because of luck, not because of karma, but because I'm damn good at my job. I left the OR exhausted, stripped off my gloves, my gown, washed up. One of the residents asked how I was holding up. I told him I was fine, just another surgery. He didn't look convinced, but he didn't push it. Richard spent 3 days in ICU, standard recovery for a bypass. I checked on him during rounds, professional, clinical, asked about pain levels, checked vitals, reviewed his progress charts. Never stayed longer than 5 minutes. He tried to talk to me every time, tried to thank me, apologize again. I'd just nod, tell him to focus on recovery, then leave. Sarah was there constantly, camped out in the waiting room. Every time I walked past, she'd try to intercept me. Try to talk. I just keep walking. One time she followed me down the hallway. I stopped. Turned around. Told her calmly that if she didn't stop harassing me at my workplace, I'd have security escort her out and ban her from the hospital. She backed off after that. Richard was moved to a regular recovery room after 5 days. Stable. Progressing well. The surgical team said he'd probably make a full recovery within 3 months. Guy was lucky. Most patients his age don't bounce back that fast from a triple bypass. On his last day before discharge, he asked to speak with me. One of the nurses relayed the message. I almost didn't go. But something made me walk into that room one final time. He was sitting up in bed, color back in his face. Looking more like the intimidating man I'd met at that dinner, and less like the terrified patient I'd operated on. He thanked me, said he knew words weren't enough, that he'd misjudged me in the worst possible way, that he was ashamed of how he and his family had treated me. I just stood there, arms crossed. Didn't say anything. He continued, said he understood if I never forgave him, that he didn't deserve forgiveness, but that he wanted me to know he was grateful, that I'd saved his life when I had every reason not to. I told him I didn't save his life out of kindness. I saved it because I'm a doctor. That's what I do. It's not personal. It's professional. He nodded, said he understood, then asked if there was any chance, any possibility, that Sarah and I could work things out. I actually laughed at that. Couldn't help it. Told him no. That ship had sailed. That his daughter showed me exactly who she was that night at dinner. And I believed her. He looked down, said he couldn't blame me for that. I left, didn't shake his hand, didn't wish him well, just walked out. That was the last time I saw him in person. 2 weeks later, a letter arrived at the hospital, addressed to me, handwritten, from Richard Patterson. It was long, detailed, full of apologies and explanations about how he'd been raised to value success and status. how he projected those values onto his daughter, how seeing me save his life despite everything had forced him to confront his own prejudices. At the end of the letter, he mentioned he'd made a donation to the cardiac wing, $250,000, in my name, for new equipment and research. I stared at that letter for a long time. Then I filed it away, accepted the donation on behalf of the hospital, sent a formal thank you through our development office. But I didn't respond personally, didn't reach out, didn't offer forgiveness or closure or whatever he was looking for. Because here's the thing, I didn't know him then. He was alive. He'd gotten a second chance. That was enough. Life moved on. I kept working, kept hitting the gym, started dating again. Nothing serious, just living my life. Sarah tried reaching out a few more times over the following months. I never responded. Eventually, she stopped. Heard through mutual acquaintances that she moved to another city. New job, fresh start. Good for her. Did I ever get closure? Not really. Did I find peace with what happened? I don't know if I'd call it peace. I just accepted it. Some people are going to judge you based on what you look like, what you drive, where you work. And no amount of success or achievement is going to change that about them. The only thing you can control is how you respond to it. And I chose to walk away, to focus on the things that actually matter, my career, my health, the lives I save every day. Do I regret testing Sarah and her family that night? No, because it showed me the truth. And the truth, as painful as it was, saved me from wasting more time on people who didn't value me for who I actually was. So yeah, that's my story. That's how I pretended to be poor, got humiliated at dinner, and then ended up saving the life of the man who treated me like garbage. And you know what? I'd do it all over again. Because at least now I know. At least now I'm not wasting my time on someone who only wanted me when I looked good on paper. So I gotta ask you, was I wrong for not forgiving him? Should I have been the bigger person? Part of me wonders if holding on to that anger just makes me as bad as them. But honestly, I don't think forgiveness was mine to give. He got to live. That's more than fair. And man, pay attention to how people treat others when they think nobody important is watching. That's who they really are. Don't ignore those red flags. Don't make excuses for people who judge you based on your bank account or your job title. You deserve better than that. I want to know where you guys are listening from. What time is it over there right now? Just curious how far this story traveled, you know? And if you've been through something similar, got judged, looked down on, treated like you weren't worth their time, drop your story in the comments. I'd actually like to hear how you handled it. Maybe you made different choices than me, maybe better ones. I don't know. Take care of yourselves, brothers.